Well, but I get a lot of that questioning of how can you get to the higher alcohols with native yeast? Don't you stick? The highest fermentations I've had have been
Native.
from the natives. Yeah. I mean, Osgood has gone to, and not that I want to make wines this high, but 17.3.
Admit it.
I like to see it happen. I do. I do enjoy watching them go out there. We've had 17.3. I think I've got as high as 17.6 on something. Yeah. And my point is not I'm proud of the alcohol level. I'm impressed by the fact that native yeast can push it there.
It's an interesting shot. We did...
when they'll tell you it can't.
It can't. At Adelaide, I got the Old Bailey Chenin Blanc that we both lust
after.
I
got that this year.
Lust after it. And I was trying to... taste some for a fee. Trying to do some of it in barrel as I was wont to do with the whites, just a barrel ferment. And I thought, well, let's go to the tank and just do a straight tank fermentation on it. Again, this is back at Adelaide, and I can't remember 1996, 95, whatever. And the stuff that was done in the tank was just allowed to ferment on wild yeast, but you could get a good reading on what the sugar was because you had the wine in the tank and you weren't dealing with skins. It was what it was. And a good reading on it says, this wine should have been 13.8, 14% alcohol. The alcohol out of it ultimately was over 15. And I've heard, I think talking with Gordon Burns at ETS Labs, that they've seen the wild yeast having a higher conversion ratio or factor of sugar to alcohol than Saccharomyces.
No, we do. Talbot's Creek, we follow it. We don't. Ryan follows it quite closely, and we get a higher conversion rate, and it changes annually, and it's getting higher, strangely. But the little beasties that are in the cellar, and the beauty of a native yeast, obviously, is it's not one. There it is. It's one population. It's multiple. Some of them begin the program, and as the fermentation continues, some of them finish the program.
Mm-hmm. Some can't handle 2% alcohol.
Right.
And
so
others,
it's always been to me a more complex way to make wine. It's a more complex wine at the end of the game.
The critical thing that I picked up a number of years ago after been doing this wine this way for quite a while was that it was a quote from a book, Harold McGee, on the science.
A ridiculous name, McGee.
Yeah, really? McGee. Yeah, I know it's a terrible name. On the science and lore of food in the kitchen, I believe it's what it is. He had, it's where you want to go to find out why eggs emulsify or where pepper comes from and the rest of it. And I think a lot of chefs really look at it as the Bible, to see and to learn technically what's happening. And he had a little small section on beer and wine. And a comment he made on the wine struck me as ludicrous at the time I read it. And his comment was something to paraphrase him as, very few of the smells and tastes in a wine are directly derived from the grape varietal. They are byproducts. Vastly, the majority of them are byproducts of yeast metabolism. And I thought about it. I said, "Are you nuts? Cabernet tastes like Cabernet, etc." But as you think about it, mentally carry yourself through. You take some Cabernet grapes that are properly ripe. You crush them and you allow them to soak to get the color, but you prevent the fermentation. Hit them with Everclear to get the alcohol up to 14% or so, and somehow remove the sugar. And I'm sure there's some way to do that, but I don't know it. But I think you can mentally, from tasting the grapes all the time, get this sense that what I'm tasting is really alcoholic grape juice. It's dry. It doesn't have any of the things going on.
So you're saying it's not the yeast?
Well, I'm saying that if you tried to make wine that way without yeast, you would have this very dull, miserable. And you start to think, well, what's the difference in Cabernet between Paso Robles, Santa Ynez, Bordeaux, whatever? It's the composition of the grapes based on the soil they grow in, because you can see, and you've seen this, the same clonal selection on the same rootstock planted in different areas results in wines that have a distinct something that's a little bit different. So it's how does the yeast metabolize that composition of the grape that results in that slight difference? That's good enough, but when you start to realize that, and I may be totally wrong here, but I built up this in my mind, so I work with it.
I'm working on the premise that you're wrong.
Okay, good.
Right.
There's something like 160 different distinct biotypes of yeast, apparently. I've never counted them, but I'm told. And then Saccharomyces is a single one.
100, that's got to be more than 160.
No, with Saccharomyces is only one of those.
Okay.
And then within each one of those,
within each,
there's thousands.
It's like 15 in your beard.
Yes, well, more than that. And then if you recognize that, hey, wait a minute, I'm using Pasteur Red, and I'm doing my whole fermentation on Pasteur Red as a yeast type, all I'm getting is that narrow band of smells and flavors that is associated with that single yeast entity. If I'm allowing everybody to come to the party, as well as all the other microbes.
So immediately we come to the point which I think is paramount, and that is the region, the vineyard, the winery, all of those factors being left to do their thing.
Absolutely.
I deplore the term hands-off winemaking. The winemaker does nothing, because we work incredibly hard, don't we?
Well, some people do.
Right, exactly. So, but to me, the interest is soil, climate, and the yeast that comes from that. And if you allow that to follow its channel and follow its path, that is the most interesting thing to me. Not to, okay, I can get more mouthfeel from this yeast, and I can add this enzyme to do this, and I can add this to do that.
It's that other stuff that seems
It's letting it follow its path. I mean, with some, hopefully some direction to some degree, just to make sure it gets to where it needs to be, as far as I don't want to be volatile and sweet.
Really?
But, well, we differ in our winemaking practices somewhat there, clearly. Sometimes. But the manipulation of additives is a detraction in my mind.
Well,
and the same with too much oak, and I love Brett, but too much Brett is too much Brett.
It's
if you think an overpowering flavor.
If you also think of it in terms, people keep saying, "Isn't this dangerous? What if Brett dangerous? What if Brett takes off?" And Brett being the social disease of the wineries.
Hallelujah!
Hallelujah! Yeah. If you use, in my case, I look at, if I kill off everything with sulfite or stunt it, come back in with a massive inoculum of a commercial Saccharomyces, Pasteur Red, whatever, and it doesn't take off. Brett is also tolerant of sulfite, and it's waiting in the sidelines, and it will do the job. However, if you allow everybody, including Brett and other bad bacteria, good bacteria, etc., to be at the party together, they're all in competition for the same food source, as it were. And it's a little bit like organic farming, where the pests and the beneficials are in some form of harmony, and it's more of an inclusive, harmonic type of environment. I have not seen, knock on things, bad fermentations that we've had in the past X number of years. I've seen some weird things, but they've been interesting.
You like weird things.
I like weird things. But nothing that's really been bad where a single element has taken off and it's just been this,
Well, and that's the thing with native fermentations. I mean, a lot of people refer to Brett as a bad yeast, as a spoilage yeast. A great comment from someone who I'll leave unnamed, so I keep my job, is Brett is not a spoilage yeast. It's one of many native yeasts that are utilized within the fermentation. And if it takes off, it's not always a good thing. Sometimes it is a good thing.
If it dominates, it's not a good thing.
Right.
But if it's there in some level, it's a nuance. Perfume made with musk. Have you ever smelled musk on its own?
No, I've not had that pleasure.
You have to lift the tail of one of those animals or something,
right.
But it's not very pleasant.
One of the interesting things at the moment with the anti-Brett wine movement is that in the beer industry is going the opposite direction. They're solely fermenting with Brett, and winemakers drink all this beer, but it's an interesting, for me, it's
because beer was made for the longest time. Pasteurize it all, pasteurize, sanitize, keep it clean.
They've gone the other way.
And then everybody's excited about what the Belgian beers that are sort of done up in dusky, snotty places.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I kind of like that progression in a way.
Those are the interesting things. I think that for me, that's been the biggest change, and it's been, you've done lots of that, I've done lots of it, but we see especially this whole other, generations of wine people who are coming in who are no longer terrified of making wine. You know, just recognizing that it is.
Well, I think there's a few that are terrified of. There are a few that aren't terrified of native yeast and that. I think at the moment the trend is in the direction of control.
When are we going to open the whiskey?
Ooh,